So
Awesome. Hello, everyone. We're very excited to be here. We're gonna wait a few moments to let more people join. But just so you know, you're definitely in for a treat. I'm joined here by, John, Devin, Zhen, and all of them. They have about. I won't spoil or steal their thunder. I'll let them introduce their projects themselves, but just know that they're great. And we'll talk about a lot of integration in between the three of them. But if you can hear us, let us know where you are calling in from in the chat. Just post like what city you're in or country, wherever you are. Just let us know. And also let us know if this is your first time attending a blockchain event, you're new to the blockchain space, or you've done this a million times before.
Costa Rica, New Hampshire, Dallas, California,
Nice.
Mexico. Ooh.
Mexico. Wow. I just escaped California. I went to Mexico last weekend. I went to Cabo, and it was fantastic. So you have to let me know what city of Mexico you're calling in from. Love hopping down there. Yeah. With quarantine, though, I think it might be harder to escape California, so we'll see.
Escape from LA?
So I'm in the Bay Area, San Francisco. Yeah. Where are you from, John? Where are you calling in from?
So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I am currently in Michigan right now. I'm with my family during the pandemic. I was spending the last 4 years over in Japan. And so then when I talk about kind of the roles that I've been doing, you understand why that came to be. So I really bounce between Japan and the US.
Awesome. Awesome. And what about you guys? Zhen and Devin, where are you from?
For me, I'm from Singapore. It's always humid here, always nice and warm. Yeah, I mean, I've lived here most of my life and around different parts in the region. I guess I've stayed in the US for a while, for a couple of years back when I first started working. But I miss the place actually. I miss SF in particular. I know where the SKALE office is. It's just at the harbor, the ferry building. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we haven't been able to go there in quite some time, but I live in Oakland, and so I usually take the ferry to like cross over, and it drops me off right in front of the office, so it was nice for a bit. Yeah, but awesome. Love Singapore as well. We were just chatting about that before we crossed over, guys, and everyone seems to, enjoy spending some time in Singapore for vacation. But What about you, Devin? Where are you from?
I am originally from the Bay Area near San Francisco, and that is where I am currently. Although normally I live in New York, but I'm back here for a while with family. So right nearby Christine.
Yeah, we're just a highway right now. Not that we could do that for anything, but we are very, very close to each other right now.
Wow.
Maybe when we start talking about more SKALE and OpenSea integrations, we'll have to find a coffee shop or something and meet up when it's safe.
Yeah, there we go.
I feel like everything is happening over in SF, but would you say that, like, this is probably an easy question, but I'm answering it anyway. Is there more going on in terms of blockchain over in the West Coast than there is on the East Coast?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Is it? I'm glad if it is, but I'm just kind of curious.
It is. I want to say that there's a equal distribution. A lot of the projects that I work with are actually based out of New York.
Oh, okay.
So there's definitely development going on here in San Francisco, for sure. But New York, we were out in Boston. When we were able to attend events, going to the ETH hackathons, met up with quite a few projects, tinkering on some really cool real estate applications or DeFi applications just right out of New York. So right where Devin usually works from. But all right, looks like we have quite a few people on the line already, so we can go ahead and get started. So before we jump into the demos, I think it'll be great to give a bit of background about each of the people that you're going to be hearing from on the call. So it would be great to, I guess, start with John again, and maybe talk about your background, how you got into blockchain, and essentially just like what are you currently doing within the blockchain space.
Okay, all right. So, hey, again, everyone. My name is John Wolff. I got into the blockchain sphere because I was always interested in video games. I moved to Japan to work on video games. After becoming fluent, I began to look into the industry. Found myself in a startup company that did some characters with Sanrio, so if you know Gudetama and Hello Kitty, games like that. And then all of a sudden, we just decided to pivot and start making blockchain games. And I was like, whoa, where's this coming from? So out of nowhere, I began to understand kind of what the mechanics are. But I think it's really cool that traditionally having a video game background and wanting to be able to make game and game mechanics, and then learning how to make game economies and ones that scale using blockchain was a very interesting perspective that the previous company I used to work for went through, and that I also personally went through. So that was really fun. And then after that company, I then began to do some game development of my own within Japan, releasing some games in Japan. And then I linked up with doublejump.tokyo, which I'll talk about later, that has made My Crypto Heroes and Brave Frontier Heroes. And I help them, as with other companies, with overseas management and marketing, trying to break the barrier on how a Japanese company can get more overseas users and vice versa.
Thanks. And what about you, Devin? From what I understand, you actually introduced us at SKALE to John. So I would love to hear about you and your trajectory and how you got into the space and everything too.
Sure. So I I'd always worked in tech in Silicon Valley. So I used to work at Pinterest back in 2013. Did CS in undergrad, so it's been really interested in technology pretty broadly, but didn't really go deep into blockchain until 2017 when things started getting a little more into the mainstream. But for me, I was really interested in sort of the non-purely financial use cases of blockchain, which were pretty early at that point. So I think CryptoKitties was kind of a bit of a spark that lit a match for a lot of people who were kind of interested in tech, but maybe less interested in kind of investing in that side of things, which most of crypto had been centered around. So yeah, I got my co-founder and I got interested in this idea of these new types of unique digital assets, of which CryptoKitties was kind of the first, and decided to go all in and start a company in the space in early 2018. And so that's how we started OpenSea.
Awesome. Great. And then last but not least, Zhen. I met you some time ago at my first conference, I think, and we started talking about how to integrate SKALE with Taurus. So tell us about your background and your trajectory.
Time ago, almost like over a year already.
Yeah.
More. Yeah. So before getting into blockchain, I was, I guess, in tech as well, software engineer at Visa. And my first experience with blockchain was actually Dogecoin. I was, as most people, a constant Redditor, and the Dogecoin trailer. If you guys haven't seen it out there, it's something to watch. It's amazing of its time. It's a classic and it will stay true always. But at that point, I wasn't actually really into the whole blockchain space, just kind of understanding it and experiencing it for the first time. Started mining a little of Doge. And I really started getting into it a couple of years after that when Ethereum started coming out, and computation and the world computer just sounded really attractive to me, other than just financial transactions of value. And the rest is kind of history. Started working on Ethereum on several different research projects. And then eventually Taurus started out as kind of like a side project my were working on while I was working on different Ethereum Foundation projects. And he and I wanted initially to build kind of like an information marketplace where one could buy and sell information without actually revealing the information itself. But we realized that the public key infrastructure wasn't there for it, and the onboarding infrastructure for Ethereum at that point in time was still very new, and that was about 2 to 3 years back. So we started Taurus in about late 2018, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. Since then, we've kind of moved around and just built the product out. We have a couple of integrations here and there, and really excited to show it to the rest of you guys.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for the intros, guys. I'm Christine Perry, so I'll be moderating the event today, and I get to ask these guys a lot of questions about, what they think about the NFT space, but more importantly, just like how their project specifically service that, using NFTs, transacting with NFTs, building marketplaces for it. And then also there's a really interesting, use case here where John, he built a game that combines the AR space with blockchain. And so would love to dive into that a little bit with you guys. Before that, though, I think it'd be good to, get a little bit of a background on, what your companies do and what you've built. And so it'd be great to do some demos first. And so we'll start with John. John, if you don't mind giving a demo of just Brave Frontier and how it works.
Yep. All right. So sorry, I was switching my cameras around.
Yeah.
View. So give me 1 second here. I didn't want to be the one who's going to end up having computer issues, but alas. All right. So everyone can see my screen now. Yeah. Can you see it okay?
Yep, thumbs up.
Okay, great. All right, so like I said, I'm John. You already got my intro, and I'm working over at doublejump.tokyo. I also do some independent game development, and that's why I have both of those on there. And we'll just go ahead and start with a quick overview. So I work for doublejump.tokyo, one of the, if not the biggest creator of blockchain games over in Japan. But there's a lot going on in the ecosystem over in Japan that people might be interested in that I kind of wanted to just break down because it can get confusing. So doublejump.tokyo actually is the parent company of doublejump.tokyo is a company called Gumi. Gumi is a extremely well-known, famous, lucrative mobile game publisher that has titles such as called Brave Frontier, which I'll get into because that's not necessarily Brave Frontier Heroes, other Final Fantasy titles, and a lot of JRPGs that are on mobile that are just really good. And so they decided to then take the leap into blockchain, which is now their kind of arm at doublejump.tokyo. And doublejump.tokyo themselves have My Crypto Heroes, which was one of the largest grossing blockchain games to date. And then the newly released Brave Frontier Heroes. And then they also kind of have this kind of publishing arm called MCH Plus, which allows them to kind of tap a lot of independent games that are coming out of Japan, independent blockchain games that are coming out of Japan. So they have this really cool vertical integration that's going on right now, which I find really cool to look at because it's vertical integration. It's a company trying to act as a real company over in a decentralized and new area. But Japan is one of the biggest markets, if not the biggest, well, one of the biggest markets for video games historically, and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to be focusing on Brave Frontier Heroes, but we cannot talk about Brave Frontier Heroes without talking about Brave Frontier. And Brave Frontier is one of the games that's produced by Gumi, and it was one of the top, I think it was the top most downloaded game in 2014. I believe it's up to 38 million downloads right now. It has over 2,000 characters at this point. And Brave Frontier is another JRPG for mobile, which I'll kind of give you a quick demo right now. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to kind of come into the blockchain space, and that's why they have Brave Frontier Heroes. So this is Brave Frontier, and the biggest thing about this game is characters. Like I said, there's over 2,000 characters. So people love coming into the game and getting a new character of some type of collaboration, like from Samurai Champloo. I don't know how many anime fans we got in the crowd. I hope we have a few. Samurai Champloo, Tokyo Ghoul, and Trigun, a whole bunch of other characters come into the game, and then you can use them, you can summon them, and then use them in battle. And so the battle is not necessarily a time-based or turn-based system, more just dynamic in the fact that you kind of set all your abilities beforehand, and then you come into the game and it's auto. So that was kind of a quick run-through of how Brave Frontier works. Now, Brave Frontier Heroes is pretty much the same. Again, it's really cool to see how this company, Double Jump, through Brave Frontier, is trying to port a traditional game into the blockchain space. It's their way of trying to kind of solve this problem of mass adoption, which I hope we get a chance to talk about later, by doing a well-branded game and kind of showing how it works. And within Brave Frontier Heroes as well, you have these units or heroes, and there's a lot of them, which kind of works to our benefit, but also kind of to our detriment, because you want to try to control your supply the best you can when you're creating a game economy. But we have a lot of characters which people enjoy to be able to find the ones that they like, and then these become NFTs that you can use on chain. And the battle system is very similar, as you can see here on the right, of people utilizing their units against enemies. And then when you do that, you'll get certain prizes, which I'll talk about in the next scene. I'm sorry, the next slide. So what happens over in Brave Frontier Heroes is where NFTs come into place, because it's all about NFTs, right? Everyone wants to know exactly how things are getting monetized here, is that they're quests in the game. So on the left, there are certain quests that you can go into, and they take you into a battle area where you go through a series of 3 battles in certain scenarios that can be longer than that. So there are beginner battles, and also there's one that is a prime battle, as it's called here. The reason why it is called prime is because we have a VIP section of the game. So if you decide to purchase a monthly subscription to Prime within Brave Frontier Heroes, or also My Crypto Heroes, then you will get certain rewards by logging in. You'll have more stamina when you go into quests. You'll get access to sales of new heroes, new characters, which again can be NFTs before everyone else, and other advantages like that to make it easier for you to access these more rare NFTs. And so if you see little items that are inside of these quests, like the sword or the suit of armor, those are the rare items that are dropped upon you successfully defeating the boss, having a little bit of luck, and other attributes that are coded into the drop rate and the drop rate mechanics logic. And the picture on the right shows a person who was able to get lucky enough that at the end they got that rare item. So you can use these items and you can equip them to your heroes, which make you stronger. So when you go into tournaments that we host weekly and bigger tournaments that we host monthly, then you're obviously going to be able to take on other players and take them down, because you have this limited edition super rare suit of armor or sword that other people don't have. Now other people want that, so what you can do is then you can sell it. So the units and then the items become NFTs. You can tokenize them and then bring them on into where else but OpenSea. So it's cool that we have Devin over here so we can talk about this more in depth. But this is a snapshot that I took of OpenSea as of just today. And as you can see here, those characters that you saw in the previous slides are now over here in the marketplace, and they're up for bid, or for sale rather, of various price points, depending on their levels, because you can level up the character. The stronger it is, the more value it should be in the marketplace. And then the items as well also are sold. And so the average price point currently right now is 0.28. You can ask Devin later on, like, hey, Devin, is that good? Is that bad? But, 0.28 comes out to, roughly 60 US dollars. So, I mean, that's not too bad for the fact that your average price of assets in the marketplace are around there. That's a good chunk of change for a blockchain game. And that's kind of the long and short of what I wanted to show for Brave Frontier Heroes and how it works. Also, it's cool that we have Zhen on the call, because just as of yesterday over in Japan, so as of really today, the 16th, we have now had actually a campaign with Torus. So we've actually integrated Torus. And if you don't know Torus, he's going to probably break it down and tell you what it is. But and I don't want to spoil it, but it is a lot easier for players to play Brave Frontier Heroes or My Crypto Heroes, because we integrated Torus, and we don't have to worry about certain login authentication processes that are historic to blockchain games. So instead, we're able to use things like your email just for Google or Discord or even Reddit, and so that gives new user acquisition to come in. I'm not looking at the questions right now, Christine. If I should be answering these actively, I think I hear them popping up. So if you'd like me to take a break and answer them, I can. But that's it. That's all I got. And the next bit is the AR bit. Would you like me to do that now? Would you like me to come back to that? What would you like me to do?
I was really jazzed when I saw the AR demo, so I would love to see it now, so that the other participants on the call can see it too, okay. And the ones intending. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so this next part is completely unrelated to Double Jump. As I mentioned, I am an independent game developer, and what I'm doing right now is kind of making augmented reality and bringing that into blockchain, so therefore making items that are NFTs, and you can actually bring them into AR. So I have two things going on right here. I'll pause this one for a second so you can kind of see how the game works. So it's an app. It's a native application. It's not web-based. And so within that, what you can do is then bring a digital pig, which is called a Krypton. There's a lot of things you can ask me about why that is the way it is. And you can bring them into 3D. You can bring them into real-world space. And the cool thing about that is that obviously building in Unity, and you can bring it into reality. But these pigs are actually already NFTs. So in the video on the right, it's actually showing how I'm accessing the Krypton that are currently in my wallet. And once the game loads them in and does its authentication, then these are actual NFTs that exist on the blockchain, the pigs that you're seeing over here on the right. They're on, they're available on OpenSea, all that kind of stuff. I'm able to import them into the game and then bring them into world space. So I picked Afro here, the purple one. And then in the same environment, you can now see that instead of the pig you had on the left, now you have an actual NFT that's now in augmented reality on the right. And there's even more stuff that we can do with that. But that is the first time anyone's ever actually seeing that. So you guys got some really cool stuff today. If you want to have more information on the AR jazz, feel free to follow me over at Kaimon International. Got that right there for you. Thanks so much for letting me do that little quick presentation. And then, of course, the Twitter for all the My Crypto Heroes and Double Jump information is here as well. So that's it. Thanks so much. Sorry that was more than 5 minutes.
Completely fine, and thanks for that, John. It was really cool seeing like all the integrations from all the projects on the call, which was like Torus and OpenSea. I would love to dig more into like OpenSea and how they help the NFT idea like push forward with their marketplaces. So Devin, do you mind giving a quick demo for the audience of what OpenSea does?
Sure thing. Just let me pop open my presentation right now. So, all right, can people see my screen? Yep, yes?
Yeah, you can see it, perfect.
Awesome. Here's a quick overview of what we're working on at OpenSea. So OpenSea is a marketplace for non-fungible tokens. The first of which was a project called CryptoKitties, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. But basically, this was kind of one of the first games, or pretty much the first game that built blockchain-based digital assets. So when we first started OpenSea in late 2017, really all the project was just a secondary marketplace for CryptoKitties. All you could trade was CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties everywhere. So it was kind of silly in some ways, but what was exciting was that people started building other sorts of digital assets in addition to CryptoKitties. So today we have over 500 different projects that we trade on our marketplace, and we've done around $15 million of trading volume over the course of the life cycle of the project. And there's tens of millions of different assets that are listed on the marketplace. So to make it a little more concrete, kind of what OpenSea is kind of like is eBay, but for your digital stuff. So this is a little screenshot of kind of all the different ways you could list an item that you own for sale. So you can list it for a fixed price. You can do a Dutch auction. You can do sort of an eBay style auction where you sell it to the highest bidder. You can sell in bundles. You can sell in stable coins. You can really, the world is your oyster in terms of how you might want to sell your assets, and you can sell any asset. So it doesn't matter whether that's an item in a game, a ticket to an event, a piece of digital art. We've even had folks who have tokenized physical assets and allow them to be traded on OpenSea and then redeemed later for the actual asset. So it's very generic. Because of open standards on Ethereum, we can instantly support any new project that comes online. So the reason we're excited about these crypto assets is because we think they combine the best properties of digital and physical. So digital assets, while oftentimes very valuable, and there's all sorts of digital assets in games, there's event tickets, there's domain names, these things already exist to a large capacity, but they have challenges associated with them. So they're transient, they're not provably scarce, they're often difficult to trade and move across multiple ecosystems. And physical assets also have large markets for them, but they also have problems. So they're often costly to produce, difficult to track, subject to counterfeit. So we think crypto assets kind of combine the best of these two properties. And so ultimately, we think that these sorts of assets will be very valuable to people. So another part of OpenSea is the ability to build your own marketplace on top of OpenSea. So this can range from just kind of using OpenSea as your marketplace. So Brave Frontier Heroes and My Crypto Heroes are both games that kind of use it in a pretty bare bones way to just allow people to trade their assets. Or it can involve something a little more high touch, where you integrate with our SDK, or you do something more white labeled. In either of these cases, one of the things that I think is actually most exciting about our model is that no matter how you integrate with OpenSea, you always get to set your own secondary sale fees. So for example, My Crypto Heroes and Brave Frontier Heroes, we've had a very close partnership with doublejump, and they've been able to generate significant revenue just from having people trade their assets. And that kind of aligns the interests of these marketplaces with the interests of the games. Here's an example of one of an early project that built a custom marketplace, and you can kind of see that there's both the OpenSea market view as well as the games site. That's kind of what I talked about. As a kind of an example project, and an example of a project that kind of went from 0 to 100 over the course of, from early 2018 to today. One really interesting project to check out if you're looking to get deeper into the NFT space is Crypto Voxels, which is the t-shirt that I'm wearing. And Crypto Voxels started out in early 2018, so about this time in 2018, and it was one developer. He decided to start selling these digital land parcels, and when you own one of these parcels of digital land, you can basically build stuff on it. So if anyone's played Minecraft, it's a little bit like that. It was just one guy. He had a very simple website. He started selling pieces of land for around, I think he sold them in like 0.1 or 0.2 ETH each. And he just kept on going. He generated revenue from selling the land. He also generated revenue on the secondary sales on OpenSea. And then gradually people got more and more interested in this. So they started building art museums on their land. There were more sophisticated avatars. He made the land or the world work a lot better over time. And so gradually the market kind of grew. And today, I believe back in February, we had a bundle of land sell for, I think it was $100,000 or $200,000. And so what's really cool about that is, he's basically, this is kind of like an ICO without all of the, craziness and scamminess about it. It's really just, someone who's building a project and, wants to have a free market economy around it. And, the folks who kind of were early adopters of the project were able to benefit from it, from the development over time. And so, I think it's a pretty exciting sort of case of a small developer really creating an interesting community and an interesting economy. I know I'm going a bit long, so I'll just talk about a few other things that we've done. We did an art mall in Decentraland. So Decentraland is a more sophisticated version of Crypto Voxels. It's sort of this virtual world where people have events, and one cool thing to check out if you're interested in NFTs is our art installation inside of Decentraland. So lastly, if you're interested in getting more involved in NFTs or OpenSea, definitely reach out. So there's all sorts of opportunities for people to get involved in NFTs. If you're an artist or a creator, there's tokenizing your art. If you're a game developer or enthusiast, you're building a game, or if you're just sort of someone who's curious, you can go and explore and kind of see what's out there. So I think that's it.
Thanks, Devin. No, that's really good to see, continue to monetize the NFTs outside of, a gaming environment. So thanks for that. And Taurus, Zhen, can you tell us about your project?
For sure. Thanks so much, Christine. Yeah, no, it was great to hear about the previous two projects, and it's really exciting because Taurus acts as kind of like a support to these two projects. And in exactly how, I first have to go back to the main issue that Taurus solves. Back in the very early days of the internet, just as how when the internet just started out in the US and a couple of nodes there, and the first days of the internet just came out, there was pets.com and all. Users of the internet had to get used to new ways of doing things, such as sending emails, such as usernames and passwords. And the concepts of usernames and passwords are very familiar to us today. But back then, it was something very novel and something people had to get used to. People had to start remembering these your strings of names and passwords. And if you forgot those, you lost access to what could have been financial assets or your account on eBay or something like that. And this shares a lot of similarities with what's going on in the blockchain space today. So the blockchain space is still, it's about 5 to more than that, about 7 years old. And really when, especially in the early days of the blockchain space and even now, individuals' first experience with it is having to handle public-private key pairs, which are analogous to usernames and passwords, except that you can't choose them, and they're not human readable. They are human readable, but they are very long 64-length character strings. And this can be quite tough to do because, or not exactly tough to do, but it can be tricky to manage, and it results in a lot of account loss and loss of financial assets just because users lose these public-private key pairs. So public-private key pair management has evolved since early days. We now have hardware wallets, tools like MetaMask, and Taurus. Taurus is a tool that allows developers to basically, it's kind of like the next level, which allows developers to provide Web 2-like experiences to the end user while staying non-custodial to the end user. So we hold no public-private key pairs for you, but we allow you to access them via Web 2 ways. And really the best way to experience it is to just see it for yourselves. So I'm just going to share my screen here. What you see here is the Taurus wallet. This is the standalone Taurus wallet. And whilst we are logging in here, we are actually more experienced on other applications, like very similarly like OpenSea or Brave Frontier, Kyber, Augur, and similar to how PayPal is integrated into these into other websites to provide their merchants with the ability to send or receive funds. We're integrated into other websites to allow them to have a better onboarding experience. And really the onboarding experience is just like this for both a returning user as it is for a new user. It's a one-click login to access your crypto wallet and start interacting with whichever application you want to interact with. I can show you guys the integration in OpenSea, similarly over here. If I'm not already logged in. So it's really just a one-click login to access your crypto wallet on whichever application. Now, there are two main ways to integrate Taurus. The first way is via the Taurus Wallet that you guys just saw. It's very similar to how one would start using MetaMask on an application. And if your application already uses MetaMask, swapping to Taurus or including Taurus is just a additional, including the script tag and really these couple lines of code. And the second way is to integrate Taurus directly into your application. Just like how the Taurus wallet interacts with the Taurus network and handles all the public-private key pair management and interaction that allows it to be non-custodial, any application can do the same via the direct auth integration. You basically spin up a verifier script, which is a specific domain, specific to your application, and you guys get public-private key pairs only on your client-side front ends, which are respective to your application and respective to your specific user. So we support multiple logins currently, including not just Google, Reddit, Discord, and Facebook, but we recently announced also an additional array of logins, including Apple ID, GitHub login, LinkedIn, Magic Link passwordless, and Line login for the Japanese folks, which I think my crypto heroes and Brave Frontier are using today. And yeah, so do hit me up at hello.tor.us or my Telegram at Zhen, which I'm just going to include at the chat.
It's so big.
So yeah, do let us know. And thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Zhen. And thanks, guys. So we want to make sure that we leave enough time for questions for the audience too. So we're going to try something different. I'm going to explain a little bit about SKALE, but during the panel, it'll be great for everyone that's listening to ask their questions directly within the chat or the questions tab there, and I'll make sure to layer them in as we're talking to all of these guys about NFTs. But to give you a brief overview of SKALE, I'm seeing a lot of repeat names. So for those that are new to SKALE, essentially what we do is we allow DApp developers to run smart contracts in a very cost-effective and more fast manner. So last time that we did this with the gaming crowd, what I showed was a SKALE integration using Unity and Ethereum. And so there's a lot of interoperability that you can do as long as the tool of choice is within the Ethereum ecosystem, we're able to integrate. So definitely with Taurus, we have an integration built that I would love to show you. And Devin, we got to talk more about the integration with OpenSea. But I'll show you why. I think it'll be good to kind of show you what an integration looks like for taking what Zhen showed you for getting up and running with Taurus and applying that to SKALE. But also, how do you make that usable for your end users? Because in MetaMask, if you're familiar with that process, you have to, every time you're dealing with a new blockchain, you have to enter a custom RPC, and you're putting the, the weight or the pressure on the end user to have to manage that. With Taurus, that completely goes away. And so would love to show you a combination of the both. So bear with me just a moment while I share my screen. And if you can see my screen, what I'm going to do actually is something different. I'm going to take you through Taurus's documentation because, again, like we've met up so many times at events and, we've integrated with quite a few other DApp developers with Taurus that you can see that you can integrate Taurus directly with SKALE here. But what does that look like if you're taking a game that you've already deployed to Ethereum and then switching it over to the SKALE ecosystem? How do you manage the constant back and forth? Because as I said before, with other platforms, that could be really exhausting for your end user. So I want to walk you through just a quick demo of what that would look like. So here I have a code pen that essentially just takes the code that Taurus just sort of like outlined for connecting to SKALE, but I also integrated code for connecting to Rinkeby. And what I want to show you is just how seamless it is, one, to integrate SKALE into multiple platforms that are Ethereum-based, including Taurus, and then two, what it looks like making that switch over from Ethereum to SKALE. So both of these buttons, the first one just logs into Torus, and this is a similar process that you just saw, Zhen do with OpenSea, where you get to log in with any, authorization of choice. I'm choosing Google. Once that login is complete, I'm on the Rinkeby network. And if I click here, I can see my wallet. Great. I have a lot of fake ETH. That's awesome. If it were real. But I'm going to switch networks here, which in the code, all that does is it gives you more power to be able to switch on your end from, again, Ethereum to SKALE. And so by just passing in the SKALE endpoint, which if you've noticed, it looks just like an Ethereum endpoint that you would use for connecting to Ethereum, which means that your level of entry or your level of effort for getting up and running with SKALE is really minimal. So if I click on this button, which again is something that the developer can build in the background, instead of having something that's on the end user to do, what you'll see is Torus notifies the user that they're switching to a new network. And so it gives the user the ability to say, hey, you know what, that's okay. Maybe I'll stay on Ethereum, but okay, maybe I'll try out SKALE instead. So if I click continue, what happens is I switch over immediately, and my wallet here now points to what's happening on the SKALE ecosystem. So if you can apply this to sort of like an NFT, when you're dealing with it in Ethereum, essentially you have built these tokens, you deploy them to Ethereum, they're building monetization behind them. And so what we're able to do in the SKALE ecosystem is create clones of what exists on Ethereum, which means instead of having to wait 45 seconds or a minute to deal or transfer that token, you can transfer that token in less than a second. Because within SKALE, one of the benefits we're bringing to developers is making it so that way your transactions finalize a lot faster. But in dealing with clones, that also means that anytime you transfer that token, or let's say you're dealing with the ERC 721, you update that token, the end user and you're not incurring any costs. That cost is zero until you decide to exit back to Ethereum. So let's say that you're touching this token for maybe 1,000 times. You essentially shrink the amount of costs that it would be to manage that token down from 1,000 to just 2. So as you can imagine, for your end users, for DApp developers that are moving over to SKALE, that's a great value as they're building more and more within the NFT space. So I'll leave it there, but if you have any questions about how to integrate SKALE, definitely reach out and we'll post more about that in the channel. But as we're talking about NFTs, I think it'll be great to, I guess, hear from the guys what they think about, the idea of NFTs like an asset in the blockchain space. Because ideally, or I guess when you think about it, NFTs have been around for a while. There's Warcraft, there's Fortnite, there's Diablo, there's all these other examples of great games that have been out there for a while, and they're not using a blockchain, but they kind of have this trading asset sort of methodology that's built within the game. So what would be the benefits of transfer something like that over to blockchain?
100%. And I can take the question first. In particular, NFTs and the difference between traditional marketplaces and traditional online marketplaces relative to transferring that and tokenizing that into an NFT, into specific consumables, is what was quite covered by Devin earlier on, and in that it's these consumables on the blockchain have the property of immutability, in that once they're created, they can't be changed, and they're specifically unique to that digital asset. Their representation is there forever, and no centralized entity can edit or change it. I remember back in the day when I was playing this game called TF2. I don't know if any of you guys have shared the pleasure as well, but the TF2 marketplace was very vibrant on Steam. But eventually, at one point in time, Steam how vibrant the community was. They raked up the transaction fee per NFT that was being traded, and they started kind of dishing out more and more, like diluting the market by creating the same sort of NFT, or the same sort of consumable item at that point in time, constantly to kind of increase people buying that particular item on their platform. And that really kind of diluted markets and kind of ruined the whole economy of things, which was very unfortunate, and which I feel if the economy was on something like OpenSea or on a decentralized platform, would really be it's more sustainable and sustainable to the community of builds as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. I totally agree. I think, you know, the interesting thing to think about, or at least kind of where we're at in the stage of like the evolution of NFTs, is I think there is a good argument to be made that kind of if you're an existing game developer with like an existing large audience, like World of Warcraft or something like that, that there's not really a strong motivation to create more of an open economy like you would have with NFTs. So I do think that at least for right now, you know, I think there's a lot of value for smaller players to kind of build vibrant economies without having to build all of the infrastructure for those economies. So I think Torus is a great example, right? Like a game can kind of build this non-custodial or this wallet experience without having to, you know, go and build a wallet, right? And similarly, you know, they can have their items be tradable without having to build, you know, a fiat on ramp into a marketplace, a fiat off ramp. So they're able to bootstrap off of this existing infrastructure to build their entire economy without having to go and without all the resources that a bigger game developer would need, or that a big game developer has to build a full marketplace. And building a, you know, a marketplace, especially in the fiat world, is actually pretty difficult. A lot of these games, you know, have a lot of trouble managing their marketplaces. So I think, you know, ultimately, one of the exciting things about it is that you can build these free market economies more easily, and that ultimately the size and ownership level of these economies can be a lot bigger than they would be if they were inside closed ecosystems.
Yeah, you definitely need to have careful planning around it, because I think it's something that, you know, it's not something that game developers are necessarily used to, especially those who are indie, in terms of making a bustling economy or trying to find a way to make economy. And it's weird how that becomes your top concern all of a sudden, because if you don't, you know, your community is going to be able to find it down the line, that the loopholes in the design that you did initially. So it's really interesting to be in that space where your decisions at the game development stage is not just about in-app purchases or just, you know, items that you want to be able to sell in your in-game store, but more of how that's going to really be supply and demand. So it gives what everyone was saying, that amazing opportunity, and simultaneously that real challenge, because you're dealing with different types of players. But I think we might get into a little bit later as well.
Yeah, and you know, both Taurus and OpenSea, they have great projects that you know, help developers as they're using NFTs within their games, as we saw, John, within, you know, Brave Frontier, and I'm assuming you're also using within your AR application. What were the decisions that went into just, I guess, deciding on using blockchain and NFTs within both of those you know, products that you're building on, versus just staying in, you know, traditional Web 2.0 spaces? What were some of the decisions there?
I think, you know, to be honest, I think over in Japan, it was a lot of just curiosity. You're dealing with a country that is just, like I was saying, is kind of the mecca for game development. And so it was very much, you know, any new technology that comes out, it's usually games that are the ones that want to, you know, take it on first and try it out. So it was a very natural progression for game developers to catch wind. Maybe specifically for, I would say, I would like to think that any game developer, even though most of the game developers that I know have no idea what blockchain technology is, but as soon as I feel like a lot of game developers, at least over in Japan, are catching wind of it, they want to try to adopt it. So it's a really interesting question you're answering, because there is the beauty that I've seen from these companies of wanting to make games because they can make games and express themes in games, versus the desire to leverage technology or blockchain technology in order to make the money. And I've seen, actually, the companies that I've worked with have come into it more from like I want to experiment with the technology. I want to try to see how I can make really cool games, versus how I can try to get money out, or really try to monetize a new way of monetization. I apologize if that's not exactly the best, maybe the most answer you wanted to get out of it, but it's been very experimental in the more intrinsic, pure-hearted nature of games, and that's what I've seen the projects that I've been involved with, and I myself am doing.
And I think that's a good point, about the monetization piece, and it's more allowing the users to be able to monetize too, which kind of combines a concept around ownership, which I think is what OpenSea and Torus are sort of like enables with their specific products, like marketplace. You own this asset, so you're able to trade it and you're able to reap the benefits of it. And Torus being able to make provide an easy path towards the users to be able to onboard and use that. When we're thinking about, monetization and ownership, I guess just like maybe we'll start with Torus. How does Torus define ownership when DApp developers integrate with wallets for the end user?
So, I mean, in the end of the day, ownership really for an NFT is really just a mapping on the blockchain, right? I mean, I can't help but boil it down to the most technical sense. It's a mapping on the blockchain, which basically says that you own you basically own this token, and your ownership is portrayed through ownership of the public-private key pair, which is why it's so important for your public-private key pair to be not a non-custodial and for you to manage it appropriately. And it also means it's also the reason why if you lose your public-private key pair, you lose ownership of that particular token. Now, on top of ownership of things, there are quite some interesting concepts. I mean, the NFT is just one standard. Or a kind of like a genre or a subclass of standards which represent unique tokens on blockchains in general. And the base layer started off with just unique tokens minting different representations of artworks like CryptoKitties, or representing unique items in games like on Brave Frontier Heroes. But really, we've started seeing more and more devs and game devs as well, kind of experimenting with different types of NFTs and different aspects of it. For example, Cryptograph, which recently also experimented with a different type of with kind of pegging the transaction of an NFT or the change of ownership of an NFT with a auction styled process, which was baked into the transfer protocol itself on the smart contract level. And you can start seeing shared ownership of NFTs between several different people, or even like Tribal, which starts building economies out of a single NFT itself, based on an influencer. And these all just go beyond just ownership of an NFT and become more of like and just kind of unveil a whole new usage or applications of NFTs, which start from ownership but go beyond that as well.
Great. No, thanks for that. I think a question coming in from the audience too, talking about NFTs today that are being built on ETH or Scale. Have there been any other chains that you've seen that devs have been building NFTs on? I guess, for John, your project, did you look at other blockchain ecosystems and OpenSea? Are you thinking about, using or enabling developers to trade different NFTs on other platforms?
Tron and EOS, right? Those are the ones that have a good amount of games on their blockchains. I think EOS Nights, which is Night Story. Night Story was a really cool game that was one of the first actual native apps that was a blockchain game that I saw on the Ethereum network. And Devin, you can kind of maybe correct me on which is the right one, but either they first did it on EOS and then they did Ethereum, or vice versa. So it was really cool to see them try to leverage on the chain. Blockchain Cuties was trying to hit them all, right? Like they did Ethereum, they did Tron, did the EOS, because they were just trying to experiment with every single one. So I feel like I've seen Tron and EOS be the biggest ones thus far for trying to do, at least for blockchain games.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the Night Story one started out as EOS Nights, which was I think one of the bigger games on EOS, and then moved or did a parallel project on Ethereum. I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of early activity on other chains. I think maybe some kind of interesting trends there that I'm seeing is there's sort of this interesting trade-off between kind of what infrastructure exists on the chain versus like what are the technological benefits you can get from the chain. So like thinking about something like EOS versus Ethereum, the developer trade-off is basically, well, like on EOS, you can have a lot higher, or I don't know what the status of EOS is right now, but like at one point you could have a lot higher transactions per second, a lot cheaper transactions. You know, that was kind of one of the benefits. But then on the other hand, like, you know, maybe the wallets weren't quite as built out, and like there was a little more friction. You know, some of the infrastructure, OpenSea isn't on EOS, for example. So some of that infrastructure that you can like kind of rely on Ethereum doesn't necessarily exist. But I think, I mean, my personal perspective, I think, you know, we're definitely going to see other chains be really interesting for NFTs and for other use cases. It's just a matter of time. But I do think that Ethereum is a really interesting space, or is a really interesting one to watch, because it's sort of this like testing ground for all these ideas. But a lot of these ideas are really hard to like come to fruition if you don't have a certain level of like transaction throughput. And if you're paying, you know, sometimes 50 cents to $1 just to move an NFT from one account to another. So some of those things, I think there'll be a lot of unlocks, you know, with projects like SKALE, when you're able to have higher TPS, and some of the more interesting like high frequency trading type trading, at least higher frequency trading type games will become a little more viable.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Trading as well, I guess. It goes to any interaction as well on the game itself. You could probably get more representation of your game. Instead of trading, it could just be like also, I guess, leveling up or breeding, or
Yeah.
Good point. Like basically, because of the throughput constraints of Ethereum, all games have basically taken core logic off chain, right? Like CryptoKitties tried to put breeding on chain, and that was, you know, that just breeding was like too much. And now there's off chain logic and on chain ownership.
Yeah, they said that, like, and it was actually a really cool thing they mentioned about that. And I was really surprised when I was first getting into space, and I think I went to see Benny of CryptoKitties talk, and he said that, you know, like the future of NFTs is having a lot of, or for blockchain gaming, is that balance between what's on chain and off chain. And at that time, that was still a really new concept for me. But since I've matured in the field and I've really seen how games do it, Axie, blockchain, Brave Frontier Heroes, My Crypto Heroes, about the level of stuff that they do off chain versus what happens on chain is a really cool balance to give you control and to also, you know, leverage a digital economy. I just really like that concept.
Yeah, I think, you know, that ties in nicely with the question coming in from the crowd, just like, how does each one of the projects, BFH, OpenSea, and Torus, how are they using SKALE?
I personally am wanting to use SKALE for my own personal reasons outside of what Brave Frontier Heroes is. They're not, I can say that Brave Frontier Heroes is not using SKALE, but could totally benefit from it, because the gas prices that are hitting the Ethereum network right now are completely killing the fact of our users wanting to go on to tokenize their units and bring them on chain, or just to log in for their daily bonus. And so there's definitely a need for a side chain, or a hybrid side chain, an elastic side chain, I believe is how you call it, that would be necessary. So I wish that we were using it, and I know that I personally would like to, so that's my answer.
Yeah, I would say similar. Like, I think the gas prices on Ethereum are extremely challenging for games to be exciting. Or well, I think it's fine for some games, but you know, we've basically seen a shift from like some of these games that can have like lower priced items to pretty much like the main driver volume being big ticket virtual land and like big ticket virtual art projects, because we just can't support. It doesn't make sense to purchase something for $1 when you're going to pay $1 in gas just to acquire it, right? So I'm super excited about Scale as something that can solve that problem for game developers. In terms of OpenSea leveraging it, it's a matter of kind of figuring out how to maintain the interoperability of OpenSea, because we are very the success of our project depends with each NFT. But if we can solve that, I think Scale is an awesome solution.
100%. And with Taurus, our collaboration is very clear. We're both kind of like dev tools, and we just help devs even more together. In particular, there are several projects in the pipeline, which I don't want to spoil their launches for them. But there are a couple projects which are building on both Scale and Taurus, which we're quite excited about. In particular, it's more towards the game side for the projects between us, and just keep a lookout.
Awesome. And I guess just speaking from the Scale side, we definitely invited all the projects on because we just love the projects that are represented here. Definitely, we've had a collaboration with Torus for quite some time now. But looking forward to working with John, especially, if you saw his AR demo in the beginning, it's absolutely amazing. And we'd love to see more of the AR space, just sort of like crossover. So we'll love to dive in more about that. And OpenSea, we're working on it. We're working on the integration. Hopefully we'll be able to get that going, because I think it'd be really beneficial to bring, that marketplace to the hands of developers that are on Scale and constantly bouncing back and forth between Ethereum. Because I think the point that you brought up, I think all of you, is that the right data needs to be on Ethereum, and everything else should live on a sidechain solution. One, because it will, operate a lot faster, and you can save on gas costs, because gas costs is what's sort of like killing a lot of projects right now. We recently had our phase 1 launch at Scale, and the cost of deploying our smart contracts to Ethereum alone was just through the roof. And no surprise there, obviously. But as you can imagine, projects that are just getting into the space, you don't necessarily want to have to take on that financial burden right from the beginning, just as you're testing out. So completely can understand that.
It's honestly only just going to get worse in the short term. Until ETH 2 comes about, which is going to be 4 or 5 years, it's like as more and more usage of the network increases, it's just going to increase load, and it's.
You think we're still 4 to 5 years out?
Cases.
You still think we're 4 to 5 years out from 2.0?
I would give that. They say 3 years, so you times that by 2 or so. Okay. And then you get a comfortable estimate of the real expectation.
Right. So that brings up
all the phases, right? So.
Yeah, so that brings up the importance then of such projects like Scale, and then also, what alternative blockchains there are out there. People haven't tried that. So.
Yeah. And, another question from the crowd, why does the record data have to be on Ethereum at all? I think, I'll start the conversation there, because from the Scale chain side or Scale network side, we never thought about being Ethereum killer. The idea was to, enhance the environment, give developers new tools to be able to work better, work faster, and deliver a better user experience for their end users. And so when we think about Ethereum, we kind of think of it as sort of more or less just like the bank. They hold sort of like the collateral for the tokens, but then you're able to have the best of both worlds, where they live in Ethereum and then they also work on Scale. And I imagine that that's the case for a lot of layer 2 or sidechain solutions out there. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there's still a need for Ethereum?
Someone else go first.
I would say I think the jury's still out. Not that I think Ethereum is an amazing project, but I think it will be. And I'm not very well educated on all this stuff, so I'm sort of just riffing here. But I think Ethereum's challenge will be sort of maintaining backwards compatibility with all of the things that have been built so far, which are awesome, but are, like a fresh start and a new chain could, probably wouldn't use like the EVM, for example. And Ethereum will have to support the EVM like for quite a long time, right? And that's like just from like a tech, not a tech debt exactly, but like a just from a like iteration standpoint, a brand new chain can iterate a lot more quickly than Ethereum can, I think. And if Ethereum has a really compelling network effect associated with it. So I think it's the two factors which will sort of play against each other. And I don't think anyone really will be able to predict. I think maybe one like probably solid long-term prediction is that like very long-term, I think there will be chains that don't rely at all on Ethereum for sure. But you know, in the more medium term, I think it's an open question.
Tough question from the crowd, definitely. It read as being a short question, but definitely opens up a can of worms there, I think. But when I think about Ethereum still, I think that there's still a huge need for it because all the developers are there. Developers spending so much time like learning the Ethereum ecosystem. So it'd be pretty hard to, or want to like pivot after you spent so much time building out your games, just rolling it onto new technology. But yeah, I don't want to let the other two guys off the hook. So what do you guys think?
I mean, it's I completely agree with you in that. Like, I would say 80% of the blockchain developer community and developer work in general of ecosystem work is generally done on Ethereum at this point in time. And whilst it's easy, it's definitely possible to iterate very fast and develop a lot faster when you don't have to do a whole migration process. This whole ETH1 to ETH2 is a huge database migration, basically, and not having to do that definitely it does reduce some technical debt. But at the same time, you see all of these other layer ones basically trying to, they have to implement the EVM because there's no choice, because everybody just knows it at this point in time. You're not going to convince somebody to learn a whole new language just to build an application on your chain. And but I think with ETH2 coming about, it started to spark another wave of layer ones. I mean, Solana just launched earlier this year as well. And you've got Sia, which launched, which isn't really a layer one, but it's you got your storage networks launching as well. And it's I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's going to be interesting, I think.
I'll take a different stance on answering this question, looking at then how you asked it. You said, what about Steem, Hive, and ETC? So I am coming from a developer, specifically a game developer standpoint. If your chain is able to support me in terms of me being able to make the game that I want to be able to do, then I will look at your chain more in a deeper manner. And Ethereum has just been the leader in the field that has shown me that I can begin to create these digital economies, which are so important to me that I would like to try to do that. Taking even a step further, when game developers are making games, what are they using? They're using a game engine. Now, Brave Frontier Heroes and Minecraft Heroes, other games are using whatever type of game they want. But what I am as a traditional game developer, I'm using an engine, which is called Unity. And if Unity has some type of support with a specific blockchain, then that makes me feel more comfortable in wanting to use that because it makes it more seamless to me. As a game developer, you can be as experimental as you want, but at the end of the day, you got to be sure you get your game out there, and you got to be able to make money off of it if that's what you're aiming to do. So the fact that Ethereum has that type of infrastructure makes me feel comfortable in continuing on this. And we're still in a completely new field. I mean, like, this stuff is like, what, 2-3 years old? Like, really, these games are still just out there. So, other chains will tell me, like, hey, we kind of have like a Unity SDK thing going on. And I'll be like, oh, well, maybe I'll check you out. But I look at it and I still am not exactly sure if I feel comfortable with it. So I default back to what I feel the most comfortable with when I've seen work. So it's all about how the chain is able to support the applications that are going to be built on top of it. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. And that's how I would answer that question in terms of the need for Ethereum, because it, the beauty of it is allows for these applications to be made on it, and especially games, and for you to be able to make them in a relatively easy way, even though it's still super hard.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. Like, build what developers will love, and they'll definitely use that chain.
Yeah.
So, and Ethereum right now is it. So, from the crowd, it looks like, Unity Scale is something that's been requested a few times on previous events too. We're working on it, but Unity SDK is not easy, as I'm sure John did explain.
Yeah, heck yeah, I completely, that's what I'm saying, I completely get it.
Yeah.
And I've been impressed with what you've done thus far, and so I'm like, yo, I'm like pretty much sold. So, like,
awesome.
yeah.
You're definitely getting a lot of love though from the crowd about your AR game. I've seen it mentioned a few times just in the comments alone, and I would love to dive into that a little bit too, because AR has been around for a lot longer than blockchain, I would argue. But they're also like two of the top like emerging markets. And so when you think about that, like, what were your challenges of merging these two tech worlds? And do you think we could learn from like what the AR space has done to date, as far as as they have grown in the space as well?
You're going to get another interesting answer, because I think both of them are still very much in their nascent stages. AR technology, at least for when it comes to games, is still, I don't want to say kaput because that sounds negative, but like it still has a long way to go. I mean, again, Unity, what people feel comfortable with as a game designer, just released their environment for developing augmented reality or mixed reality VR at the beginning of June. So that's just last month. So like that's where you are in terms of getting the actual game support to be able to make this kind of stuff. And then you got to learn how to actually make it work. I mean, getting things to be level on a platform. Like, these things are so complicated. So AR technology is still hard. Blockchain technology is still hard. The two do not have any strategies which help each other out. They are both just things that you have to, independently learn and see how to mix. Now, the advantage that I've had is that in my game development experience, I have made some partnerships of people who have worked on blockchain games that just so happen to be of a certain type that lend themselves to the AR space, and I was working on that to make this come to light. So they are both really hard right now, and we can make it look easy, but behind the scenes, like, they're both going to take a lot of work to really make it all cohesive. But I'm trying to make this game come out as fast as possible. I think you'll have something cool by the end of the year, but that's kind of like my answer to that. I'm sorry if that's not ideal.
No, it's actually promising. It lets us know that we're doing as good as we can in the blockchain space with building infrastructure and building developer tools. I think with OpenSea and Torus on the call, definitely helping out there. Seeing is that you implement both of them in your application that you showed. So really cool, just like seeing the synergy of cross collaboration and interoperability among all the different projects here. So hopefully, with the work that you're doing in AR, might be something that will continue to combine those two spaces, because AR is cool. It's just a cool tech that we would love to see more of, but just like you said, it does seem like it's also fairly new. So we don't see as much as we would like.
Yeah, and there's another issue with it, but not necessarily with AR, which again, I'm really happy to see that Torus is integrated with a project like SKALE, because as a developer, that makes me feel even more comfortable, is that issue of mass adoption, which he was bringing up in his initial presentation, which is we have individuals who are blockchain gamers or people in the blockchain space, but we have such a world of individuals who know nothing about blockchain. And how do you introduce cool games to them? How do you get these things to them? You have to have a seamless way to make that work. And so the two products that you have, respectively, are totally solving that issue, making it easier for developers, but also for new audiences. And then, all you got to do is just send them over to OpenSea, and then they're just blown away about how all this stuff works. And it really is cool how it's becoming all packaged really nicely together.
Awesome.
So kudos to all three of you.
Awesome. Love it. Well, we're definitely, running out of time here, but I want to make sure to leave the audience with just like one piece of advice from all of you. So what would be like the one piece of advice or best practice you can give a game developer as they're either continuing on this journey or just joining the journey, either using your project or just in general? What advice would you give them?
Specifically for game developers or just general advice?
Let's go with general advice.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blockchain advice.
I mean,
I can go first.
yes.
I got mine.
Go,
No,
please.
go.
No.
No. You need,
I don't
you
have
need more
mine.
time?
I was gonna make it up along the way, and I'll start the
I
sentence.
love it. We have to share knowledge, guys. Share knowledge.
You're gonna make it up along the way. Oh, I wish. Oh man, I wish you had said it first. I'm like, did you make that up along the way? I would just say just go into it with a pure heart. If as a game designer, because if you make a game that you're trying to nickel and dime people out of, your community will know. Right? You release that contract, and down the line, they'll see it. They'll definitely know. So if you're, I understand that you want to monetize, but if you're a game designer, just don't forget about the fun. That's definitely my recommendation for sure. Because I've seen projects try to nickel dime people. I've seen projects that don't, and it's crazy. It's evident.
I think a general advice as well is take a focus on implementability. I think there's nothing that matters more than that. Decentralization is not binary in general, and neither are any of these trade-offs that trade-off between gas prices and usability, or trade-off between there are often a lot of trade-offs and development decisions you're going to have to make, and ultimately shipping a product and understanding what your users care about most is the most important thing. And definitely that it can be achieved within your own time frame of effort or time, or whichever that takes. And it's important to weigh those things and ship. Shipping is the most important thing.
Yeah, I would echo both of those pieces of advice. In fact, and this is sort of a riff on the idea of implementability and listening to users, but I think sort of building on top of things and building something incremental versus reinventing everything is kind of the nature of the blockchain space. I've seen, I guess, maybe my advice kind of comes from what we've seen not work very well, or at least not be good uses of time. So like examples of that are like building like an entire stack of things on top of a blockchain that just kind of like sit completely isolated from everything else. If you want to do that, you have to like be comfortable with, essentially being a game that has a very slow database, but other than that is just, no real differentiator from a normal game, right? So I think like if you're trying to build a game, playing around with all of the existing projects, seeing what's worked, what hasn't, and then figuring out what iteration and remixing of that you can add on top of it. And there's lots of really like cool stuff you can do. So I know my Cryptic Heroes and Brave Frontier Heroes have done really interesting things sort of in collaboration with other games, where like you can redeem an asset from another game and get an item in Brave Frontier Heroes or something along those lines. So there's all these cool things you can do, but I think for the most part, they're always like collaborative in some nature. They're typically never successful if they're like completely isolated from the rest of the ecosystem. So I think that's kind of like the thing that's unique about this space, and then all of the other sort of lean startup methodology of listening to users, figuring out what people want applies as well. And I think sometimes people forget that when they like do blockchain stuff. So I think that like those fundamentals are really important as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And I guess what I will say to add to that is, this is a space where we're all still learning, we're all still growing, and the feedback is definitely needed, so that way we could grow better and build better tools. So if you see something that you want more in all of the projects, I'm sure that all of them would love to like hear, what you're looking to do, so that way we can figure out how to like build better. And then if you would like to also like contribute to the blockchain space, definitely just dive in, help us build more tools, help us push the ecosystem forward. So that way, we can do slightly better than what's going on in the AR space, according to what John said. So
It's not a competition.
I might have just made it one. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you guys for being part of the panel. It was so fun, like chatting with all of you, and thanks for all the questions, everybody. So feel free to reach out to any of us, and yeah, look forward to the next time.
Anytime. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Here, and it was a lot of fun to do this.
Awesome.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.